Good evening. Hope you're all doing well. Today we're learning Maseches Nedarim Daf Samach Hey, and as well Daf Samach Vav Amud Aleph. We'll be going until the Mishnah that's 2/3 of the way down, and then on Shabbos we'll pick up with the next blot and a half. Yes, and we'll be starting at 3:04. It's 45 minutes before. It depends on how long the blot are. So I cheat every week. I try to make. I stopped doing the full hour because it's Nedarim. In Yuvamos you need that, but not in this Masech. Let's get started. Top of Samach Hamid Aleph. The Gemara says, Tanya the Brisa writes, Hamudar hanome chavero. If there's a neder between me and you that I'm not allowed to benefit from you, or vice versa, ein matirin lo ella befanav. If you want to be matir neder, it's not just going to a rub. It really needs to be done in front of the other person. So if you and I have a din between us and Isra Hana, Amudar Hana, so then I have to undo that. If I want to undo it, it has to be in front of you. How do we know this? So really, this is piggybacking on the brief reference we made yesterday about Moshe's neder, which we're going to learn a little bit more about now. Amar Rav Nachman, we had said that Moshe was allowed to go back, even though he was breaking the neder that he made with Yisro, because Kimesu Kol HaNashim. But look at the word b'midyan. Amar Lo, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to Moshe Rabbeinu, b'midyan nadarta lech v'hater nadarcha b'midyan. If that's where you made your neder in the first place, then that's where you need to undo your neder. And what neder do we know that Moshe made? D'chsiv Vayoel Moshe, because the language says Vayoel Moshe, and ein Allah ela shvua. How do we know that the word of Allah, which is the root of the word Yoel, it's the shorish of the word Yoel, is Allah, which means to make a neder? How do we know that ein Allah ela shvua? That's from a whole nother story, a little animal cannibalism. I didn't know this was a thing, but apparently one of the great enemies of the Jewish people was a fan. So says the Gemara, D'chsiv vayavo oso be'Allah, that he made a neder with him. This is talking about between Nebuchadnezzar and Tzidkiyahu, and what was going on there. Begam b'melech Nebuchadnezzar morad asher hishpiu belokim. That Tzidkiyahu made a neder with Nebuchadnezzar, and Tzidkiyahu seemingly broke his neder. Okay, what's going on here? We have a neder between Nebuchadnezzar HaRasha and Tzidkiyahu, and the tzaddik, Tzidkiyahu, was the one who broke the neder. We need a little bit of context here. And the Gemara says, my marduse, what was the rebellion of Tzidkiyahu? So it says the Gemara, hafla v'fela, that these things have ever happened. I can't imagine such a thing, which is good, because otherwise I'd be a cannibal. The Gemara says, Ashkechei Tzidkiya leNebuchadnezzar, he found him to have a ka'achil arnav chaya. He was eating a live rabbit, like the animal wasn't dead. Take a bite. Yum. Amarle, when Nebuchadnezzar realized that he was caught in this act of animal cannibalism, Amarle, Ishtabali, he says to Tzidkiyahu, promise me, Delo miglis ilavi, you should not reveal what you just saw about me, Velo tepuk milsa, not a word should leave your lips.
1,800 years later, it's still going. Secrets out.
Unbelievable. And says the Gemara, Ishtaba, Tzidkiyahu agreed to make a shvuah. He agreed. He made a shvuah that he would not reveal this dark secret of Nebuchadnezzar. L'sof, but after a while, have him come start Tzidkiyahu begufe. It was paining Tzidkiyahu so much because he knew that undermining Nebuchadnezzar would be much to his benefit, and this kind of secret is the kind of secret that supposedly should ruin people. We've had presidents with secrets that were also very bad, and the more we learned about it in our modern culture, seemingly it made no difference at all in the voting. Okay, hopefully back in the day, Tzidkiyahu was hoping that the bad news would have undermined Nebuchadnezzar. So what did he do?
We have where you can make a neder. In other words, if the scale of third for his life and Nebuchadnezzar would have killed him, he would say, no, I'm not going to swear to it, right?
Yeah, but
so I'm saying he could have been mounted another anyway by it wasn't really neder in the first place.
You're saying a pesach of a neder. So the Gemara doesn't entertain that. That's a good question.
We did learn this.
Maybe like Beishan,
Yeah.
Nedarim,
That what? Oh, the distinctions. The Gemara here doesn't. Yeah, the Gemara here clearly doesn't go with that assertion. That's for sure. And we typically wouldn't have a stam Gemara like Beis Shammai out of the blue either. Okay, either way, what was the rest of the story? So what did Tzidkiyahu do? He went to Bezdin and Ishal Ashvu Aseh ve'Omar. He got Rishus from Bezdin. He said, please be matir my neder. We need to undermine this guy. He's evil. And Bezdin was matir the neder. Shama Nebuchadnezzar to call mevazenle. All of a sudden, the birds are chirping and everybody's saying, this guy's a wacko. He's eating live animals. This isn't Aver min hachai, where the Aver is separated from. He's eating the animal itself, the chai. He was very angry. And Shalach v'aisi Sanhedrin v'tzidkiyo. So he went and he sent for the Sanhedrin that paskin that was matir the neder, and for tzidkiyo. Amar lahon, and he says in front of the Sanhedrin, he says, hey, listen, I may be a Russia, but you guys have a system of laws that you have to keep. Chazisun my ka'avid tzidkiyo. Did you see what tzidkiyo did to me? Lav hachi, is it not the case that ishtaba b'shma d'shmaya, that if you make a shua in the name of the heavens to lo miglina, that you're not allowed to reveal it? So he's angry. What does the Bezdin say back to him? Amar amru le, they said to him, ishali ashwasa. He was shoal on the neder. Could you imagine talking with Nebuchadnezzar about he was shoal on the neder? Unbelievable. The Gemara says, Amar le, Nebuchadnezzar says back to the Sanhedrin, really? Mishalin ashwasa, you're allowed to be shoal on a neder? So they say back to him, Amar le, in, yes you are. And then here comes the dagger. Amar lehu, he leans in, he's like, wait 1 second. Befanav afilu shelo befanav. Do you mean to tell me that he's got a lom d'shiyid shakav? He's like, but what's the rule that you taught me on the top of Samech Hamad Aleph? Isn't it true that you can only be shol on a neder b'fanav? Ein matir and lo ela b'fanav. It's a brisa. So egg on their face. Amrei le b'fanav. They said, Taka, you're right. Amar lahon, and then he says back to them, Nebuchadnezzar says back to them, Ve'atun ma'aviditun. What did you do about it? You guys know the din. My time alo amrisum l'tzidkiyahu. Why didn't you tell him that it has to be b'fanav? Why didn't Tzidkiyahu know himself? Why didn't Bezdin say something about it? And why is Nebuchadnezzar the Russia talking about dikduke halacha in the Nedarim? It's an unbelievable Gemara. Miyad, right away, yeshvu la'aretz yidmu ziknei bas Tzion. They were demoted. Amar Rav Yitzchak sheshamtu kara mitachtim. The pillows were removed from under the Sanhedrin. Crazy story.
Now, making a neder or a shua against the non-Jew, does that have anything to do with?
It has nothing to do with the non-Jew. I make a neder not to share X. I cannot share this information. It has nothing to do with the guy. I'm making a neder not to share information. That was the neder he was making.
Yeah.
So that's binding, because I could say the same thing about a yid and about a goy. This information cannot leave my lips. So that was a neder that he was making. All right. Beautiful. Next Mishnah, 3/4 of the way down. Samachem. This is not a Gemara you can forget. Other Gemaras you can forget. Other Gemaras we successfully forget. This one's hard to. I've never heard of this in my life. That Tzidkiyahu, that like witnessed Nebuchadnezzar eating not a raw rabbit, a running rabbit. It's an unbelievable thing. What? Yeah, Ever Hachai. By the way, it's still Ever Min Hachai. It's both. The whole thing is half of a fella. It's crazy. Does Ever Min Hachai assume that the limb was separated? Probably not. Probably no distinction. I have to look back in my notes because it's not Aver Min Hachai.
It's still an Aver. Oh, because of the word min.
Yeah. That's normally what we presume is to be Aver Min Hachai. I remember learning this, that one of the nafkaminas between a Jew and a goy in regards to Aver Min Hachai is the moment in time when an animal is dead versus being alive.
It's more chomer by that.
It's more chamor. It's more chamer by them than by us, because right after the shchita, for the next 60 seconds, the animal is tremoring and shaking. It's called pirchus. So by a goy, if he cuts a limb off during pirchus and he eats it, it's Ever Min Hachai. By a yid, it's not Ever Min Hachai because the shchita is done. So it's one of the rare scenarios in halacha where there's a chumrah by a goy that doesn't apply by a yid, and it's a din deoraisa. It's not stam. These are dine deoraisa. Anyways, let's continue. Rameir Omer. We had spoken about the fact that there are times where we can use nolad, at least according to some Tanaim, where you can use nolad as a way to get out of a neder. L'dugma, if a person, if you make a neder that, I'm not like the example the Gemara gave. I'm never going to go into this person's house, and then it turns into a shul, like we learned yesterday. That's considered nolad. And that's a good Pesach, according to those Tanaim who support using this as a Pesach. But there are some cases, says the Mishnah, that are like in the twilight zone. And they're really kinolad and einon kinolad. And ve'ein chachamim modinlo. This is a big machlokas in the Girsos. Is it ve'ein chachamim modinlo or ve'chachamim modinlo? We don't know. And it's not clear from here or from the Gemara. Ketzad, what is a case scenario that's both kinolad and einon kinolad, that really is in the middle? Amar, a person says, Konam she'eni nose as plonis shavi hara. I will not marry this wonderful girl because her father is a Russia, or he's a bad person. And then Amrullah, they said, I'm glad you're kicking up some sand here, but don't worry. Mace. Oshe asa tshuva. So what was my assumption? My assumption was that he was a Rasha, and either he died or he did tshuva. Or another example, 6 lines from the bottom. Konam labayis zeh she'ani nechnas she'akelev ra besocho o she'hanochash besocho. I make a neder never to go in this house because there's a vicious dog there or there's a venomous snake. Amrulo, they said to mesa kelev o she'neherag hanochash. So then what's the din in all of those cases? In these 2 cases, harehin kenolad ve'eno kenolad, this is in the middle. And as we saw in the beginning of the Mishnah, we saw the sheet of the Chachamim, ve'en Chachamim modim lo, and here too the gears of change may apply, but the Chachamim may agree, we don't know.
Actually, it's right by the fact that the daughter and the father, the fact that the father, even though he's dead, he had a spot on her, right, 30 years. He made her into who she is, and that
Rivka.
No, I'm saying maybe that was his, if she was free.
She was not a regular 3-year-old. She was mushba for years from her father, and that's a big enough. If our kids were like her at 3, we wouldn't say that. That means that she's a tzaddikas already. So wait, I say that again. That what?
No. In other words, who's to say that it wasn't necessarily assuming that the father was still alive now? It's like that the father had a shpa on her for so many years.
Yeah. Pashtus to the Mishnah is that he's evil. I don't want to deal with him because it doesn't.
That's what I'm saying. It's much with that way, but
Yeah.
why couldn't be the other way?
Yeah, could be.
You're saying that because of the yiffus that.
Yeah,
I'm not because he's scared of what would happen with the father.
Correct. He doesn't want to touch the.
But we see clearly that Yaakov had no qualms about love him, right? Except he didn't trust dealing with him, right?
I asked a Shaila about this. There was a young woman who was an advisor in NCSY back in the day. And she connected me. Her sister had this, she was dating this boy, and this boy came from a very, very complicated, abusive, very difficult background. And she said to me, what should I do? Should I date him? I'm afraid about his background. I'm like, I don't blame you. I hear you loud and clear, and I don't know the answer to the question. Let me ask a Shaila. So I called Rabbi Menachem Nisla, Talmud of Rabbi Moshe Shapiro, and I said, is it bad Eitzah to tell her that she shouldn't date this person because he probably learned bad things? So he said the following answer. He said, if he's shown stability over a reasonable amount of time where his habits are healthy and his relationships in life are healthy, he's not getting fired from work every other year, and he has some stability, you have no right to break off such a shidduch. I'm uncomfortable by it, but I grew up in a healthy home. So my head is a little different, but it does make me a little uncomfortable. And I told her that, and then he broke up with her. He was engaged within 4 weeks to another girl. Like super fast. I don't know. The whole thing makes my skin crawl. It's just too fast. Yeah, maybe she was on something. I certainly, I was uncomfortable with the whole thing to start with, but I quoted the psak back to her, and she stayed with him for 2 more weeks now. So maybe in the Maisa, we're not as concerned about that. Maybe we look at those scenarios and we have to say that people change and people grow, and people sometimes, in spite of their parents, like they're going to look at their parents. You were a bad parent. I'm going to be the best parent in the world. you see that tenacity. I spoke with someone today who said to me, she said, I'm a balas tshuva. She said, mamish, I'm quoting, she said, my parents have pork in their freezer and I have kids in from day schools. And she said, I am running the opposite direction of my parents. So it's hard to know, but the Gemara the Mishnah doesn't seem to learn that way. Okay, that's the end of the Mishnah. We're 2 lines from the bottom, Samech Hamid Aleph. The Gemara quotes, Konam she'eni nechnas l'bayis she'akel v'chulei, and says the Gemara, wait 1 second. One of the examples that you gave in our Mishnah as a solution to the neder is that the person died. But mace is nolad. Mace isn't nolad ve'eno nolad, like our Mishnah wants to say. We learned about mace yesterday. Mace is not a case of nolad ve'eno nolad. Mace is nolad, straight up, just a straight up case of nolad. So the Gemara here quotes the Machlokas Amorim. Amar Rav Huna, no. What this guy was saying was, it was a condition of his marriage. I'll only marry you if he dies. It's not saying that I'm waiting. It's not saying that I make a neder like that. The neder is, I'll only marry you when he dies. That's what the Gemara says. Nase ketola nidro bedavar. My neder was talui on his death. I'll marry you when he kicks. That was basically what was happening. So it's not really a regular Pesach. That is what's considered nolad ve'eno nolad, when it's a conditional type of neder.
That's a nine, not a neder.
It's ketola nidro bedavar. It's the language of the Gemara. Yeah, it's a t'nai, but that you're allowed to do that. I hereby make a neder that I will not marry you for as long as your father is alive, and therefore I cannot marry you. It's an isser d'oraisa for me to marry that woman during this period of time while he's still alive.
So even though it's not, he said it as a net.
Correct. And again, I don't know if t'nai is the right word. I don't know. I'm not saying it isn't, but here the Gemara uses a bit of a different language of katola nidro. But it's probably the right word. It's a little bit of a different spin. And that's shita number one as to why mace is different. And shita number two is no. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, no, there was a misunderstanding. The guy made the neder, but he didn't know that kvar mace u kvar asa tshuva ka'amrile. He didn't know. It was total toe. It's a total mistake. So these are the two shitas. And now on the top of Samech Hamid Beis, the Gemara analyzes these two shitas. The Gemara says as follows: Masiv Rebbe Abba. We have a brisa. The brisa reads, Konam she'eni nosa leplonis ke'ura. I make a neder that I will not marry this woman because she is unattractive, she's ugly. V'harehi no. I got a bad resume photo. Turns out she's actually a very pretty girl. Shechura, she has very dark skin. V'harehi levana. And really, turns out I was wrong. The picture was dark, and it turns out she's very fair-skinned. Kitsara, she's very short. V'harehi arucha, and it turns out she's actually a reasonable height. In all of these cases, mutar ba. Why? Because his neder was on, it's a house of cards. Because lo mipnei shekuura v'nasena, you don't go from ugly to beautiful. Shchora v'nases levana, that didn't happen either. And kitsara v'nases arucha. These are biological realities. You either got it or you don't. And nothing changed here. What was happening here? Elisha neder tos. The whole thing was a mistake. So now we have this brisa, and the Gemara is looking at this brisa and saying, this only makes sense according to one of the approaches we saw on the bottom. 5 lines down, 6 lines down. I understand the Shita Rav Huna. The previous case, our Mishnah, says that the case was Nasa Katola Nidro B'Davar, that he was basically making a t'nai, and I understand why I need that Mishnah. So therefore, Tana Tola Nidro B'Davar, that one Mishnah is talking about Tola Nidro B'Davar, and this Mishnah on the top of Samech Hamid Beis is V'Tana Neder Tos. They're different cases. One's a t'nai and one's a tos. Ela the Rabbi Yochanan de Amar kvar meis v'kvar asa tshuva lama li lemisnei trei zimnei neder tos. But according to the Shita of Rabbi Yochanan, both of these brises should be the same, which is neder tos. You defined our Mishnah as neder tos. This brisa is explicitly neder tos. So Rabbi Yochanan, you've doubled yourself. Why do we have two brises if you're right? And the Gemara responds, kasha. That's actually a very good question against Rabbi Yochanan. We don't paskin from Gemaras on our own, but it would then seem like we hold like the Shita of Rav Huna. And what that means is if a person makes a neder with a t'nai in it, and it's about a person's death, that's not called nolad. That's called nolad ve'eno nolad. It's in the middle. And that brings us to another Mishnah. Mishnah is a third of the way down on Samech Hamid Beis. V'od Amar Rav Yochanan. V'od, of course, connecting to the previous Mishnah, which was also in the name of Rav Meir. V'od Amar Rav Meir. Did I say Rav Yochanan? V'od Amar Rav Meir. Poschen lo min ha'kasuv shebetorah. You're allowed to have a Pesach to a neder based on Psukim and Chumash. V'omrim lo, ilu hayisa yodea, if you would have known, she'ata over alo sikom v'lo sitor, that you're violating taking revenge, ve'alo sisnas achicha bilvavecha, that you're violating the issur of holding hatred in your heart, ve'havta l'recha kamocha, v'chay achicha imach, and what is this v'chay achicha imach? Shehu ani ve'ena tayachol lefarnaso. If you make a neder and then he becomes poor, you can't feed him, you're in violation of that din. So if that's the case, Omar, if he would then respond, oh, I didn't know I was in violation. I make a neder that I will hereby bully you every day. I didn't know there's a pasuk in Chumash. So that's considered a valid Pesach. It says the Gemara, I didn't know there was a pasuk in Chumash about this. By the way, this could be true of any subtle din as well. There's plenty of things that are in Chumash, but there's far more halachos that aren't in Chumash that are dinei d'oraisa. So you can have something that's so small. I hereby make a neder that I'm going to lick every stain on my shirt to get all the stains out. Yeah, but on Shabbos, that's libun d'oraisa if you do that. I was at someone's house, and one of the kids, they got a cut, and they got some blood on the carpet. Out came the spray and the scrubbing. It's like a mamish libun d'oraisa. It's like the actual malacha of libun. Is a big problem. These are Yisuri D'oraisa. So if she would have made a neder, I hereby promise to keep my carpet clean 7 days a week. Oh, I didn't know that it was an Yisur D'oraisa to do that. Okay, so then matir neder, and then the whole thing is.
What do you do in
Mush-
What?
It's not considered like the flight on Monday.
Mush mamash doesn't tell.
But they didn't know. The context of our Mishnah is Ilu Hayisi Yodea. I didn't know.
Why do they need to pass that? That's what I'm saying. Shouldn't it just automatically fall away?
Right.
Oh, Great question.
But how can you take it against something that's?
That's not. Well, we don't know what neder the person made. Yes, that's true too, but this is a language of neder. I presume it's a language of neder. Yeah.
But how can a neder for something?
It doesn't say, but in the context of things, it's l'chora, it's a neder. But I like David's question. It could be, or another possibility is that the formulation of his neder was indirect, like we've seen before. Not, for example, that I make a neder to not fulfill the mitzvah of ona, but to say that there will be no hana and tashmish. That we've seen already in Shas, that's an acceptable form of a neder because it's like one step removed. We don't know what neder the person made in this Mishnah. All we know is that it was in direct violation. The result of the neder was violation of some type of halacha like this. Okay, a few ways to answer the question. It's a great question. I didn't think about it. It's a great question. So the Gemara, I'm sorry, did I miss somebody's comment? Anybody else?
No, I think it was basically the same thing. How can you make a neder again?
Yeah. It just has to be. It just has to be indirect.
Just make it go.
We're actually going to see this in the next Mishnah, that there was a little bit of we're going to call this issue out a little bit more, but it doesn't come up directly here. Kasha, why it doesn't come up directly here, but let's see in a minute what that case was.
Can't you put salt in it? You do that? Just put salt in it, it supposedly helps it.
Just pour salt on it?
Yeah, when you want to clean it afterwards.
Does it clean it?
I don't know. No, it's supposed to
It
absorb.
absorbs.
It goes in.
I don't know if it actually, how well it works or not, but supposedly it absorbs.
I don't know.
Was it your kid?
No.
Somebody else.
No. No, they would have thrown me out of the house. It was it would have been bad. Would have been bad.
If salt actually does do something, then you probably still have the problem with
It might not be libun doraisa. It might be a lower version.
There's also, if you're bringing out the thing, you've got shlita with the sponges and.
Well, if there's only salt, then there's no schita. But
If it's proper.
salt, yeah. I mean,
But
people like to pour Perrier carbonated water on things. Also, that's not allowed. That might be shora. That just might be ein shora and b'shabbos. That might be okay. These are problematic. In my house as a child, it wasn't an issue. I remember when I was like 7 or 8 years old, and I cut my knee in the den, and my mother said, "First, get out of my den, and then go get a napkin for your cut on your knee." And I remember complaining about that. My mom was like, the carpet will be here for, not because of Hilchos Shabbos. The carpet will be here for a long time, and your boo-boo is going to go away in a week. So get out of my den and go put on a Band-Aid. But you know too much information. It's not good for you. It's not good for you. Yeah. Oh yeah. Couldn't tell you. I'll believe you though. Amar le Rav Huna, bar Rav Katina le Rabbanan. Nema, is this to say, in regards to the Isra of V'chei Achicha Imach, that someone may become poor and my neder would leave me in a scenario where I can't help him? Does that mean to say, Kol demani lava lai nafil? Not every poor person falls on me exclusively to fund. That's crazy. People get poor all the time. They lose their jobs all the time. It's my job to take care of that one yachid? Absolutely not. My dematili the parnaso, that which is my burden to support him. I'm not the only one. He gets funded by the whole city. He'll go to the Chicago Chesed Fund. They'll give him a handout, no problem. And I'll donate to them indirectly. But what does that have to do with me? Why is that my isser that he got poor and I made a neder against him? Too much. Says the Gemara, Psychology 101. I love this. Omar le, ani omer kol hanofel, eino nofel idega boy tchila. When a person becomes poor, they don't go straight to the Chicago Chesed Fund, straight to the Tamchui, straight to the Rav. First, they struggle and they suffer on their own. And when you see that, you have to help. You have to be willing to help. It can be awkward. You have to know what's going on before you say, "Can I offer you a handout?" People don't like handouts. You have to find the right way to say it. But the Gemara says that the reason why there is an isser of a chayachicha imach is because there's a stage before being destitute where they go to the soup kitchens. That's where our mitzvah is. That's a beautiful hashkafa and halach at the same time. 2/3 of the way down. Poskim la'adam b'ksuvas ishto. We're allowed to use the ksuba of a woman as a pesach for a neder. What does this mean? a man made a neder that there would be no hana, which is really a reference to tashmish, and that's unacceptable. The neder was chal because of the way he said it, but the mitzias wasn't reasonable because he has a mitzvah of ona. Okay, you can't have there's two things conflicting. His ksuba was 400 dinarim. Uba lifnei Rabbi Akiva v'chayvo litein la ksubasa, and he went in front of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva wasn't having it. He says you have to pay her the full ksuba, 400 dinarim. Omar lo, so sharp. Rabbi Akiva's response to this was awesome. Omar lo, this person says to Rabbi Akiva, Rebbe, ches meos dinarin hiniach abba. My father left me 800 dinarim. Natalachi dalad meos vani dalad meos, and all I'm left is with 400. That's all my money. Her ksuba is 400. My checking account has 400. Lo daya, isn't it enough? Shesitol hi masayim vani masayim. Can't we just split? Let's just go halfsies on the ksuba. Rabbi Akiva is like, how about no? Amar Rabbi Akiva, afilu ata mocher se'ar roshcha ata nosin laksubasa. Even if you have to sell the hair on your head, I don't care. You're paying out this ksuba. You brought this upon yourself. I don't want to hear any crying. You're done. This was your problem. Don't make a neder that's going to put you in a trap, or we can undo the neder. Oh, Amar lo, ilu hayisi yodeh shehu kain. Had I known that this neder would bring about an ultimatum scenario of either be mefer neder, be matir neder, or pay up. Oh, lo hayisi no there. I didn't realize. I didn't realize. He tira Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva pushed him to the envelope, to the end of his limits, and he backtracked. And that's how the Mishnah points out. That's how we're able to use a ksuba as a form of a pesach for a neder. Says the Gemara, a technical question on this. What are you talking about? Metaltale mi mishtadel ksuba. No, we don't use metaltalin for ksuba. We use karka for ksuba. Says the Gemara, Amar Abai, karka shava ches meos dinar. We're talking about ground. We are talking about karka. Says the Gemara, we can't be talking about ground. Hakatani, say our rosha, but say our rosha metaltalehu. We said he's got to sell the hair on his head so that he can pay her, even if he didn't have enough. If he didn't have enough in the ksuba. Says the Gemara, no hachi kamar. Afilu ata mocher say roshcha ve'ochel. If you pay her 400 and you have nothing left and you want to take some shearings from your hair and sell them for a couple, and you have to eat that way, I don't care. You need to pay up. I don't care if it makes you a pauper. You need to pay up. Says the Gemara, Shamas mina. We can hear from here something that connects to a very big masechta, a very big machlokes in Maseches Baba Metzia, that ein mesadrin the balchov. We do not give the balchov the opportunity to get his affairs in order. Pay up right now, in full. Not my problem that you made a deal and you don't have enough cash on hand. You figure it out. Seems from our Gemara, by virtue of the fact that we're pushing him to pay the entire thing, ad kedei kach that he has to shave his head and right. So much so that that ein mesadrin levalcho, we don't allow someone to get his affairs in order. Says the Gemara, not necessarily. Amar Rav Nachman Rabbi Yitzchak, turning to the top of Samach Vav Amud Aleph, lomar she'ein mekaran shtar. All it's saying is that we don't tear up his shtar. It just means it's not a raya brewer that ein mesadrin balcho. We're not going to get into this. So again, now if you want a little bit of a snippet, you can take a look at the Mefarish, you can take a look at the Ran, and that brings us to the Mishnah on the top of Samach Vav Amud Aleph. Says the Gemara. This is a Gemara, I believe we saw in another context, that we are allowed to use Shabbos and Yantiv. This is talking about if a person says, I'm going vegan, and they're like, ain't simchel b'basar b'yayin, it's Tanug Shabbos, it's Ochel, you should be eating meat on Shabbos, fish, kasa d'harsin, all the minhagim. Oh, I didn't realize, therefore you can be mater neder. Says the Gemara, but Rishona, initially, Hayu Omrim, they used to say, Osan Hayamim Mutar, and only Shabbos and Yantiv are mutar when he's matir. When he uses Shabbos and Yantiv as a Pesach, it's only matir those days where there's a din to eat meat. Ushar Kol Hayamim Masurin, but that and all the other days, Sunday through Thursday through Friday would be usher to eat meat. Ad Sheba Rabbi Akiva, until Rabbi Akiva came and dropped a bomb as it relates to the world of Hilchos Nedarim. V'limed, what did he teach? Shaneder shehutar michlalo hutar kulo. Once you have a portion of a neder that's been undone by a Pesach, the whole neder is done. Done. There's nothing left. Baby in the bathwater. You may have been very well intended, and only one of the 7 days out of the week was your pet. The whole thing is gone, says Rabbi Akiva. Ketzad, let's look at some examples, 5 lines down. Omar, a person says, Konam she'eni nene lekulchem. No hana from any of you in the room. Hutar echad mehen hutru kulam. Remember, we discussed this in a previous part of the Masechta of what if your father was in the room, right? We discussed these cases, so that's an application. What about she'eni nene lezeh? Ulazeh, I go around the room and I point. I'm not going to benefit from you, and I'm not going to benefit from you. Hutar harishon hutrukulan. If the first person that I pointed to, if I have a Pesach to be matir him, between me and him, then everyone's mutar. However, hutar ha'acharon, if the last person that I pointed to was the one who became hutar, I had a Pesach, it was my father, whatever the case may be. Ha'acharon mutar v'chulan asurim. Skip the parentheses. A person says, "She'eni nehne lazeh korban v'lazeh korban." What about there? Tzrichin pesach l'kol echad ve'echad. There we need individual psachim in order to get us out of the neder. Konam yayin sha'ani toim shahayayin ralame ayin. A person says, "I'm never going to drink wine again because it's bad for the stomach." Says the Gemara, Amrulo, that's not, it's just pasha, not true. V'halo miyushan yafilame ayin. An old vintage wine, you're looking at the many decades category of wine, that's actually good for your stomach. What does the Gemara say in line with Rabbi Akiva? Quarter of the way down, third of the way down. Hutar b'miyushan, that it's then mutter for that person to drink wine that's miyushan, that's old. V'lo b'miyushan bilvad hutar ela b'chol hayayin. It's true of all forms of wine, even the 2021 grapes in the bottle of kedem. It doesn't matter. Old, new, it doesn't matter. Even though your ratzon was to say, I'm not drinking wine that's bad for my stomach, but you spoke too broadly. In that broad category is wine that's miyushan. And afal pi, that the newer wines might be hard on your stomach, you're still going to be mutter to drink those again. Make a new neder, make a proper neder, do it the right way. I'm not going to drink wines that aren't miyushan. No problem. But if you're going to say one that's broad, then when you have a Pesach on part of it, then it all falls apart. Konam batzal she'ani toem she'abatzal radalev. A person makes a neder that I'm not going to eat onions because it's bad for the heart. Yes, maybe caramelized onions are bad for the heart, but onions in and of themselves might not be. Amrlo, they said, "Halo kufri yafel." Kufri is a type of onion; it's in the onion family. That's good for the heart. So, what does the Gemara say? Hutar b'kufri. Okay, you're allowed to eat that type of onion, and not only that, v'lo b'kufri bilvad hutar el b'chol habit salem. Once you ruin your neder in part, you've ruined your neder in whole. This actually happened, and Rabbi Meir was utilizing the logic and svara of Rabbi Akiva, and he was matir that a person could eat all onions, even though all they had intended to exclude was onions that were bad for the heart. Says the Gemara, Hutar ha'acharon mutar v'chulan asurin. According to this piece of the Mishnah, where we had said that a person individually went around the room and said, I'm usher to you, and I'm usher to you, and I'm usher to you, people 1, 2, and 3. We had said that if person 3 was hutar, we found the Pesach to be matir person number 3. So we had said, ha'acharon mutar v'chulan asurin. Only the last one is going to be usher, but persons 1 and 2 are still going to be usher to him. Says the Gemara, Ma'antana. Who is the author of such a shita? Mm-hmm. What? It was individual netters. David, Stan, Tex. Yeah, 20 separate things. However, the Gemara does, it's not a totally separate one, because if the first one falls away, then all of them fall away. And if the last one falls away, then the others are still usher. They're also still beneder. What? That's this exact question. Who, Montana, who is the author of such a shita? It's very unique. We actually saw this earlier in the Masechta, I think. Amar Rava, where did we see this? Oh, so I thought we saw this already. What?
Looks to me like it's later on.
Yeah, but I remember seeing this. And says the Gemara, clearly I'm wrong. Reb Shimon de Amar ad sheyomar shvuah l'kol echad ve'echad. No, that's not the case. It's only dealing with the case of shvuah l'kol echad ve'echad, and therefore, when the last person is the one who is hutar, the others remain usher.
Wait a second. Why is that? Why is the first one it's okay and the last one isn't?
Other way around. If there are 3 people, I say 1, 2, 3. I'm usher to you. I'm usher to you, and I'm usher to you. Mm-hmm. So if the first person I say that to falls away, he has a Pesach for another, he's the bottom rung, everybody else falls away.
Right.
But if the third person is the one with the Pesach, person 1 and 2, no Pesach, they're perfect. And person 3 was the one who had a Pesach, and he was a person I no longer had to be Be'isr with. The first 2 are still standing.
Right.
It's a blended shita, which was kind of what we're saying. He's like unique. It's not like they are said individually, I'm usher to you, and I'm usher to you, and I'm usher to you. But because they were said in one breath, we connect them in some way, but not in every way.
No, so that's still my question is, why is it one way and not the other?
That's the shita right here of Rava in the name of Rab Shimon. He says the Amar ad sheyomar shvuah l'kol echad ve'echad, that it has to be that there's a shvuah l'kol echad ve'echad. Let's see what the Mefarshim have to say about this. Where is that? Amar. So take a look at the Ran, a third of the way down. Amar Rava Reb Shimon. He Amar beperak Shavuos Apikadon Gabe Hayu Hey Tovin So. 5 people made a claim against him. Amar Lo Lach, not to either of you. De Olam Eino Chayev Al Kol Echad Be'echad Ad Sheyomer Shvua Al Kol Echad Be'echad. You can't have everyone grouped together until you use a lashon of everybody being grouped together. So therefore, the last person says he's patur from the neder because of a Pesach. The others are going to remain usher because the language of the noder wasn't all of you. Shvua, it was shvua lazeh and shvua lazeh and shvua lazeh. So until you broaden your language wider, Reb Shimon still says that if the third person was patur, then the first 2 will still remain usher.
So would he say then if you just made, I'm not having hana from anybody in this room, right? And then even if it was the last one, it would show a line, then.
The whole neder is gone.
Right, okay.
It's that when you customize it, I'm usher to you and I'm usher to you and I'm usher to you. Yeah, that's what the Ran explains over here. Okay, 2 more very quick things and we'll stop at the Mishnah. It says, V'tepuk konam yain shani toim, v'tepuk le de'ein ra. Why is it, Gemara, a brilliant question. The guy said the wine is bad for me. Why did they come back to him and say, no, Miyushan wine is good for you? Why didn't they just say, no, the wine isn't bad for you? Why do we have to put in the positive category? Let's just remove, he's wrong. He's got his data wrong. He didn't look at it. We don't have to go from the guy saying, wine is bad for you. And then you'd be like, no, wine is good for you. The Gemara says, why? Just say the wine isn't bad for you. Why do you have to go all the way to the positive? Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Abba, the od yafek tani. You're right, absolutely, that's true. But we're just saying it happens to be that you're not only are you wrong, but it's actually good for you. So it's agreeing that if a person could just simply shake the truth out of this person and say you thought that it was ra, but it's actually not, it's neutral, that would also be fine. And similarly, konim batzal shanitom she'abatzal v'chulei v'tepuk le de'ein ra. Why do we have to say that kufri is good for you? Kufri, who cares? Just say that the onions are not bad for your heart. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav od yafek tani. You're right. Even if a person would bring it from the noder's assumption of bad and bring it back to neutral, that would be enough. It just happens to be, but happens to be, there is a goodness here, there is a value here, and that is that kufri is good for the heart. We'll stop right here and pick up on Shabbos at 3:04 p.m. at this Mishnah, 2/3 of the way down on Samach Vav Amar Aleph. Wishing you all a beautiful night.